Welcome back, guys. We're here for Jaws 2.0.
I am hypnotized. What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through.
Hi guys, welcome back to Jaws. I'm Ashley Wahler, and this is...
Jason Wahler.
So I hope you guys tuned in last week to Insanity. I feel like that was a really amazing episode. I felt really good about it, and I hope that you guys did too after you listened to it, because there's so many times in my life over the last couple of years that I've truly felt insane, and I feel like now I'm on the other side of it. And
what stood out most to you?
I just think like the continued behavior and expecting different results without changing the behavior, and knowing that it's like more of an action program and how I contribute to a lot of it. So I think that was like the takeaway for me. What about you?
I was pondering everything that we went through with Insanity, and for so long my life was just insane in general. And just looking at, I think really, and I don't know how much I touched on this last week or not, but just the behaviors that I, like the lengths I would go to, to keep my addiction going. I know we touched on it a little bit, but just like really looking back and just the manipulative, the lying, conniving, and just like how lost you get into all that stuff, it's truly insane. And looking back, it's like, I can't believe like where I'm at today, and reflecting and seeing how addiction grabbed hold as deep as it did, and where it takes you. And you really, like, you're just so blinded. And I often just reflect just on how grateful I am that I'm sober, because it's just like the bondage that you have to a substance. There's nothing like it. It is brutal. And I'm just so grateful that is not a part of my story anymore. But you got to keep doing the work. So,
yeah.
Which kind of leads us. Were you gonna say something?
No, I was gonna say amen. I was gonna see if you wanted to check in about our week and see how we were doing this weekend. And
yeah, I think good things were good. I think just checking in real quick. The topic that we're gonna talk about today is forgiveness, which kind of ties in directly with the Insanity, and a lot of forgiveness needs to be put into place, especially when somebody gets sober and you're going through the process. You got to be able to make amends, take ownership, accountability, and so that's really, really important. But before we get into that, it was interesting. Ashley was gone this weekend. Unfortunately, she had to go to a funeral for a family member, and I was with the kids. We ended up having a blast, and it was. I'm exhausted from it. Today's the day after. But she obviously had to deal with a heartbreaking situation, and it was just easiest for us to stay here. And I had the kids for the weekend, and it was like daddy daycare, daddy day camp. I don't know. We were just nonstop from 7 in till like 9 at night. Anything from basketball to
Waffle House to
Chick-fil-A to freaking
Dick's Sporting Goods,
hibachi, Dick's Sporting Goods, hockey games, softball practices. It was really fun though. What an awesome time I was able to have with the kids, and just really bond with them and be very intentional, and to be with them, and made me a lot more grateful too though for Ashley, because our kids would probably be very unhealthy if she wasn't here, just because it's a lot to try to manage everything on your own. And so for those people that are out there that are single parents and they're trudging the road without support, man, hats goes off to you. I've done it before, but it's often I'm usually the one that's traveling or leaving. And I usually I'll make sure if Ashley leaves, I have support. So I can do that. But I obviously love spending time with the kids, but yeah, that was my check-in.
I love that. No, I was just gonna say how your weekend was. I went away to LA for a funeral, and yeah, it was just like a quick plane ride. I've never been this pregnant flying that far, so it was, I think, on my body exhausting. And then the time change is just, you don't realize that 2 hours really does you in when you have to wake up at 5 here. It's 3. So anyway, I'm so happy to be back home. I had a really rough day at work today. It was just kind of a nightmare, but I'm glad it's over. really glad it's over. Anyway.
Let's get into forgiveness. So look, we actually at church, we learned about forgiveness, and it really hit home with us just after everything that we had talked about and the things that we had gone through. And so just wanted to share a few key takeaways that we had learned, and we'll touch on to those. But first I want to talk about, I'm just going to ask you, what does forgiveness mean to you?
Oh my gosh, what does it mean to me? I feel like it's like a big question.
It's pretty simple.
No, because there's so many facets to forgiveness, and I'm thinking about it from like an addiction codependent perspective. I think there's a difference between like forgiving people and sweeping it under the rug, because I think sometimes people think they forgive people, but they just kind of like, it's not really forgiveness. It's like they just try not to remember it. And then there's forgiveness where you truly forgive somebody, and then the burden is not on you. And so I feel like that's a really important thing. It took me a long time, I feel like, to forgive a lot of the situations that had happened in our household and the addiction in general. And I had to come to a place where like the forgiveness was only hurting, like me not forgiving was hurting me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's something that was harboring my peace and my happiness. And until I could get to a place where I could forgive, then like I really found that I could move forward.
What was the hardest thing for you to forgive?
I don't know. I'd have to really think about that. I mean, the hardest thing to forgive? I mean, there's so many things.
Jeez.
I'm serious. During that time, I feel like there was a lot of stuff. I think just forgiving you in general for relapsing and all the shit that happened. I mean, the stuff that happened, and the turmoil for the years, and, the non-support of having a child and feeling like I was really alone in that whole process. Like all those things, like having to forgive that it's the disease taking over your body. It's not you. Like, and that hurt me, because I think this is also something is like, if you don't have forgiveness, you're going to have resentment, and the resentment is going to build and build and build until it's kind of like a ticking time bomb where it ends up just hurting yourself. Because like we've said before, when one person's recovering and the other person's not, the other person is like continuing to grow and this person's plateauing, and that involves forgiveness and resentment and all of those things. I think they're all encompassing when it comes to addiction and family members and stuff. So I think until you can truly forgive, then you lose the resentments.
Yeah. No, everybody's journey is obviously, different how they process and go through stuff. But I think the key thing that was interesting to hear is the dangers of unforgiveness, and what that does from like, even from the Christian perspective, it blocks you from God. It hinders prayer. It poisons your mental and emotional health. Endangers your community, basically, affects physical health, gives the enemy a foothold, which I thought was interesting because it gives them access to you, like a stronghold. And then it sabotages your destiny and where you're going. So I think those, what really stood out to me is just how how it basically affects all areas of your life. You just think of that one individual or that one person or that one situation, that's the only area you would think that would have effect on, but ultimately it seeps throughout the day, and how it encounters into your communication with other people, how it affects your relationships, how it affects your work, your sobriety, whatever it may be. But it definitely wears. And I think something that really stood out to me too was, we talked about how to forgive, right? And there's like the internal forgiveness versus reconciliation. And so I think like what you were talking about was, for you was internally being able to forgive me from what I was going through. But then later obviously came the reconciliation, which is an external thing where we actually get on the same page and amends are made and we go through that. But it's interesting because there's people that, I had issues with, or things that had happened over the course of time. And I was so angry and held on to so many resentments around that. And this message, through hard work and through everything that I'd gone through, I was able to get through that process. And thanks to the program that I work and was able to work through that. But I always thought there had to be reconciliation for proper forgiveness. I always thought that for so long. And to know that you can actually tap in and really forgive somebody by being able to, for me, it's around prayer now and tapping into that and asking God to be able to remove that from me and really letting go and turning it over to Him. It alleviates that chaos and that negative thinking around things. And I think it's important because there's situations in my life for sure where I've been able to forgive people that I didn't have to have human reconciliation to make that come to fruition. And so a lot of times, I think people look for, okay, part of that forgiveness is we have to be on the same playing field or same understanding of what somebody's going through. And that's not the case. Reconciliation can definitely be a part of the forgiveness process, but it doesn't always have to be for you to grow.
It doesn't always have to be. I think it's so fascinating too. One of the things that I think that people don't realize is I always say addiction's like a family disease. It seeps into your pores. You can lose sight of who you are when you're in an addictive relationship. And this is so true because in number 3, when it says the dangers of unforgiveness, it poisons our emotional health. Resentment and anger create stress and anxiety. Grudges create stress and steal our peace and joy. We live in pain instead of in joy. And so I jotted that down because I feel like that is so important. I don't think people realize that not forgiving puts so much stress on our bodies. And it's like the book Your Body Keeps Score. It's stuff that we don't even understand or really know about during the day, but just harboring those little tiny bits of unforgiveness and resentment can eat away at us.
Yeah.
And that is something that when you're upset, say for instance, you have somebody that's living with active alcoholism in the house and you are constantly building up those resentments and those unforgivenesses towards that individual, it's really hindering your own health and recovery because you're just grudge holding all the time. You're walking around feeling like you're walking on eggshells. And I know people that are in relationships that have an addict in their lives right now that feel that walking on eggshells feeling. And a lot of that is the unforgiveness and the resentment towards that individual. Mm-hmm. That takes time. It's not like it's just going to go away, but these are things that we don't realize that over time have such an effect on our health and well-being. Yeah. So I thought that was really, really fascinating. And also the thing that you said, and then the next one too, it's damages community, the environment, and it can create dysfunction. So basically we've heard this before, hurt people, and you are who you surround yourselves with. But when you are in that kind of dysfunction and you're living in that, you'll be surprised that you'll surround yourself around people like that. And you don't even realize it until you kind of wake up and be like, that person's kind of unforgiving and they're complaining about something and something else. And next thing you know, you're surrounding yourself with all the people that you're representing.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating, but they'll creep into your lives because, that's just what happens.
No, you're definitely a product of your environment. And I don't know, that's why I think it's I think ownership and accountability and making amends, as part of the recovery process is such a huge part of it. Right. And it's in those areas where you need to take ownership and accountability for your actions and be able to forgive yourself. And the same with others. And again, as you said it perfectly, is unforgiveness creates resentment, and resentment is one of the quickest ways to relapse. And so I think it's really important for you guys to evaluate and take a look at areas in your life where there's hurt and where there's anger, there's judgment, there's frustration. And again, it's not to justify for the other people that had done those things, but at the end of the day, you're the person that's still suffering from that. And to truly, try to forgive somebody it's not easy. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes prayer, but it's also, if you have faith, turn it over to your higher power and allowing them to remove that from you. And so I don't know, hopefully this will bring light to you guys that are going through something where there needs to be forgiveness. And I'll tell you, as a part of our journey, what we were going through, I mean, Ashley, had every right to be as angry and as frustrated as she was with the things that I had done. And through her, from our experience and what we went through, is there was so much anger and so much frustration built up for a long time. It got to a place where, like, it was probably like a year. I'm like, Ashley, like, I understand, take ownership and accountability, not justifying for the past behavior, but like, are we going to be able to move past this or not? And that's where she was using the example of, like, I was growing in my recovery. I got sober again. I started to do the work. I started to do what I needed to do. And she was staying stagnant with part of her work as we were developing. And it's interesting because you really went in and were doing really, really good. And then you got stagnant, and I kept moving forward. But a lot of those underlying resentments were due to lack of forgiveness, and it kept Ashley sick in her way, and it also allotted me the opportunity, though, to set my own boundaries back then unintentionally. It was like I was almost doing stuff from an Al-Anon perspective, being like, dude, like, we got to figure this out. And again, that's where we really were at a place too, is for those that are out there that are going through this, if you're dealing with a loved one that's in active addiction and they're in the early stages of getting sober, we needed somebody to help course direct us and have somebody help facilitate the conversations with us in the early stages, because we had, somebody that didn't have a bias on the situation, that could really give sound advice, that wasn't taking sides with one another, because there's a lot of things that Ashley was trying to communicate that I couldn't understand, that having somebody else explain it made sense to me, and vice versa. And so again, is that's just something that we went through that was very beneficial, like, to help us get to real forgiveness. And also, it's like, I'm not just the victim here as well, as even though I had, what I was dealing with and what I was going through that I needed to make and apologize for. There was things on your end too that, played a big part into it. And you'll hear me say often that wherever there's an alcoholic or an addict, there's a codependent, and sometimes they're just as sick, if not sicker. And Ashley had a part to play in certain things as well that caused anger, frustration, and there was parts of me that needed to be able to have forgiveness as well. So, we're just navigating this, and it's awesome to be on the other side. Look, we still have our moments. We still have the things that we walk through. But I think the more that we bring this to the forefront and understand, like, keeping forgiveness as a part of the solution, which it really is, it's going to help that healing process a lot more. And again, it's not co-signing behaviors. It doesn't mean that you have to bend over and push your boundaries aside. But it's allowing you to continue to grow and allow forgiveness in your heart. And it's brought me to a place too with the people that have hurt me, and I had a situation not that long ago that was pretty impactful, where I had a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, and it was like so debilitating. And it was just like, by communicating and sharing that with one or two other individuals, praying about it, and just asking God to remove it. I mean, that truly has been a part of my solution today. So, any last thoughts to this?
No, I just think that was really great. I mean, I was just going to share, like, if you're out there and you're kind of struggling, like, they kind of gave us some tips on how to bring that to the forefront and really rework it. So I just want to let you guys know really quick, and we can end with it. So how do you go through the steps of forgiveness if you're really lost? These are just like guidelines. Basically, recognize it, list who has hurt you, and write it down specifically. A lot of times we go through, like, at least for me, I feel like I'm a forgiving person, but that's just because I let things roll off my shoulder, but they still are inside, you know? So, like, being able to actually write things down, it helps recognize and put it on paper and say, okay, this is specifically who has hurt me or wounded me, and this is what I want to, these are the things I would really like to heal from.
You're creating awareness around
Yes. Then reframe empathy for the person who has hurt you. I think that's really important, kind of flipping the script and putting yourself in their shoes. Release, letting go, and letting go of the right to retaliate. So just basically letting things go instead of feeling like you need to do the fight mode. It's like letting things go. 4, remember God's grace, and how many times he's had grace with you, and just remember that God gives grace to all of us. Number 5, and finally, is request. Request to help love the enemy, and instead of you trying to persecute them, understand that like God will do what he needs to do if somebody's gonna hurt you. Don't take revenge. Leave room for God's wrath. And I thought that that was like really important, because a lot of times we want to do it our way and like fight it. But at the end of the day, like God also has a plan for everybody else. And I think it's not our position to.
Vengeance is mine, says the Lord.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just a way to put things on paper. If you're having trouble with forgiveness, it's just some tangible tools that you guys can use to help you on the forefront. So
yeah, way easier said than done, but try to love your enemies and pray for them. So
Amen.
Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the week, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye guys.